around the town. We have a very, very exciting show for you today. I'm your co-host, Leslie Gross, and with me is the Director of Communications, Collin Nash. And together, we're going to delve into the history, personal history called genealogy, which is what we're going to learn about today with our very special guests, who've spent their time and have dedicated themselves to checking out this history and helping people find their roots. Welcome to you both, Joysetta and Julius Pearse.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
First of all, why don't you tell our audience, what is genealogy?
Actually, genealogy is, you can use the word family history. The difference between a family history and a genealogy is that the genealogy is documented. In other words, we have oral history. It doesn't necessarily have to be just oral. It can be written somewhere. But because it's not documented, it's considered just a family history. Genealogy means if you have a birth, you have some documentation for that. If you have a death or a marriage, you know how many children a person had because you have documentation for that. And that whole body of work that you do your research on and document every facet of your family's life story. And that's what makes it a genealogy, the fact that it is documented.
Julius and Joysetta, tell us a little bit about yourself, starting with you, Joysetta.
Well, I worked for NYNEX most of my life. That was prior to Verizon for those young folks out there. And while there, I attended a lecture, I think it was at Hofstra University, and this speaker was Dr. James Rose. He had done the work for Alex Haley. You know, Alex didn't really sit in the basement of some dark and dusty repository, you know.
Checking out roots.
Right. So Dr. James Rose, as a young person, did that research. And he was talking about family history at Hofstra. It was a Black History program there. And I was so intrigued. And I said, wow, this is something I really want to do. But I thought, my family is just so commonplace, and I don't know any stories. We had like an interracial marriage so that, you know, we didn't know the other side of the family at all because they didn't, you know, talk to us, etc. So I had nothing to work with. But Julius knew a lot. So I came home, I told him about it, and he, you know, remembered stories that his grandmother told him, and we started into this venture. And it was from there, it just spread out. Dr. Rose became a good friend of ours. And he taught us a lot of things. We went to the Schomburg. That was really the place in those days, the National Archives downtown or the Schomburg. And we worked with him, and eventually he hired us. And then he moved away. He moved south, and he turned over all his research business to us. He was known as Dr. Roots in Hempstead at that time.
So, Julius, I mean, tell us about yourself. Why were you so interested in this field? I mean, your background, I understand you have an investigative background.
Yeah,
anyway.
I'm a retired police detective. I was the first African-American hired for the village of Freeport in 1962. And when I got into genealogy, though, is when I retired, I decided I would go and just do research on my family. What had happened is that I knew a lot about my family because I used to remember my grandmother, and we were like kids crowding around the skirt of my grandmother trying to get her attention. And as we did that, she told us stories about our family. And so when I went home one day, my mother introduced me to some cousins that I didn't know. That kind of intrigued me. And I also saw a history that was written from oral history about our family, and I just kind of disagreed with that a little bit. I said, no, this was not right. And so I decided what I would do is to try to document that family history and to write it up and make sure that those facts that were told about our family were true. And that's what got me started into genealogy.
So that's the facts that
Yeah.
back up these oral histories, which
Right.
you try to trace. There's so much information now online. How do you know what to trust, or how do you begin to check your genealogy?
The basic thing is to look at legitimate documentation. There are places online where you actually have the census data that you can actually read, the original census data. And repositories such as the National Archives, they have some of everything. They have vital records, they have the census, they have military records, they have court records. There are places that you know the actual documentation is there. And that's where you can do your research. A lot of it is online, but also online you'll find people who say that this is this man's son. But you can build up a case gathering different sources of information and prove it. So that is basically it. You have to really write a complete genealogy. and you have to have all the pieces in place. You know, you can't fudge it.
Okay.